Hey everyone, welcome to US Daily Beat. It's Friday, August 14th, 2026, and I'm so glad you're here. We've got some really interesting stories for you today. Instagram accounts fueling Ceuta crisis with paid advice for help to cross. Activists try to deliver aid to Palestinians in homes besieged by Israeli. Electric vehicle sales targets could be cut after pressure from car makers. But real quick before we dive in, if you'd like to support the channel, go ahead and subscribe and give this video a like. It genuinely means the world to us, and it's what keeps this show going every single day. All right, with that said, let's get into it. All right, let's kick things off with world news. If you've seen viral posts about a quick way into Europe, this story is a reminder that social media can turn a dangerous journey into something that looks almost easy. BBC's Top Comment podcast says it found a network of Instagram accounts glamorizing the swim around the border fence between Morocco and the Spanish enclave of Ceuta, and in some cases offering paid advice about how to make the crossing. Ceuta is one of those places that can really test Europe's migration system because it sits on the edge of Africa and is controlled by Spain. That makes it a focal point for people trying to reach the continent and for the authorities trying to stop them. The problem is, online posts can strip away all the reality: the cold water, the strong currents, the risk of injury, detention, or worse. What looks like a shortcut on a phone screen can become a life or death gamble in the sea. And that's why this matters beyond one border. We're seeing how Instagram and platforms like it can shape migration decisions in real time, especially for young people searching for hope. The big question now is whether these accounts are being taken down fast enough and how governments and tech companies respond when the next wave of misleading advice spreads. Next up, we've got a story from World News. This is one of those stories that really shows how quickly an already tense situation can turn into a humanitarian crisis. In the occupied West Bank, activists have been trying to get food and basic supplies to two Palestinian families who've been trapped inside their homes for several days because of Israeli settlers outside. That means ordinary things like leaving for groceries, checking on relatives, or even getting help can become dangerous or impossible. To understand why this matters, it helps to remember that the West Bank has long been one of the most volatile parts of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Palestinian communities there often live with the pressure of settlement expansion, restrictions on movement, and frequent clashes that can flare up without much warning. So when families are effectively boxed into their homes, it's not just a neighborhood dispute. It's part of a much bigger struggle over land, safety, and control. What activists are trying to do here is simple: get aid in and help those families stay alive and stable. But whether that actually happens depends on access, protection, and whether the situation escalates further. And that's what we should be watching next. All right, so in business and finance, if you've been following the push to go electric, there's a pretty big shift being discussed right now. The government says it's considering lowering the target for how many new cars sold in 2030 need to be electric, with the number potentially dropping from 80% to 50%. That matters because this target has been one of the main signals guiding the auto industry, car buyers, and investors about how fast the transition away from petrol and diesel is supposed to happen. Car makers have been pressuring officials, arguing the current target is too ambitious and could be hard to meet without more support, especially if demand for EVs doesn't grow quickly enough or if costs stay high. For you and me, this could affect more than just what showrooms look like in a few years. It can influence car prices, the availability of electric models, charging infrastructure, and even how fast manufacturers move on new investment. If the target is cut, it may give the industry more breathing room, but it could also slow the pace of the switch to cleaner vehicles. So the big thing to watch next is whether the government actually changes course and how investors, automakers, and EV buyers react if it does. All right, so in business and finance, we're planning a quick barbecue with those disposable grills, there's a new heads up you should know about. The government has announced a temporary ban on the sale of single-use BBQs in response to the current drought and heatwave conditions, warning that they pose a significant risk to the public. And honestly, the timing matters here, because when the ground is dry, a small spark can turn into a much bigger problem very fast. This isn't really about taking away summer fun. It's about trying to prevent fires before they start. Disposable BBQs are popular because they're cheap, easy, and convenient. But that convenience can come with real danger if they're used in parks, on dry grass, or anywhere wind can carry embers. For retailers, it also means a sudden change in what they can stock and sell, at least for now. So if you're heading out for a picnic or a weekend cookout, it's worth checking local rules and thinking about safer alternatives. And as these heat wave conditions continue, this is the kind of policy that could get more attention if fire risk stays high. Switching gears here, this one's about technology. If you've ever used Bumble, you probably know the big rule that set it apart. In heterosexual matches, women had to make the first move. That was a huge part of the app's identity, and for years, it helped Bumble pitch itself as a different kind of dating experience. Now that signature rule is going away. The company says it's making the change after a successful trial, and because user preferences have shifted. In other words, Bumble is betting that people want more flexibility and that the old setup may not fit the way dating apps are being used today. This matters because Bumble built a lot of its brand around that women-first idea, so changing it is not a small tweak. It could reshape how conversations start on the app, and it raises a bigger question we're seeing all over tech. When a product's original idea no longer matches what users want, how much should the company change to stay relevant?